welcome to the first semi-virtual meeting of NEA Political Animals. I'm Andrea Allen, co-chair of NEA Political Animals, here with my co-chair, LJ Bryant. Before we get started with our program today, I'd like to ask everyone, regardless of political affiliation, to keep our President and First Lady in their thoughts and prayers as they have tested positive for COVID-19. Due to social distancing, our members of Political Animals are watching today's meeting on Facebook Live. Here with us at the Jonesboro Chamber of Commerce are our candidates for mayor, whom we will introduce shortly, and our timekeeper and host, Carrie White, with the Jonesboro Chamber of Commerce. Make no mistake, Carrie is no Chris Wallace, and she will cut you off if you go over your time or interrupt other candidates. LJ will now come up and talk about the format and the rules. LJ.
All candidates will have an opportunity to make a 2-minute opening statement, introduction, to introduce themselves and their platform. The order was determined by drawing before today's meeting. They drew 1, 2, and 3. Questions were solicited from Facebook and on our email listserv, and those questions were used for today. Each candidate will be given 1 minute and 30 seconds for responses. After all 3 candidates have answered, each candidate will have the option to give a 30-second rebuttal. We will end with a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate at the end. And we'll see today, the audience might not see it, but there's a large TV screen in front of our candidates that has a countdown so that they'll be aware of where they stand from a time perspective. And Andrea is next to introduce candidates.
Okay, now we're going to get started by introducing our candidates for mayor of Jonesboro. And we have dispensed with the formal introductions as they are going to each tell you a little bit about themselves in their opening remarks. But here with us today we have Harold Copenhaver, Tom Elwood, and Andy Shatley. Gentlemen, we will start with the candidate who drew the number 1 and let you give your opening remarks. Harold Copenhaver.
Well, good afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity, as always, to be a part and associated with the Chamber of Commerce and again with Political Animals. So again, I appreciate your time. My name is Harold Copenhaver, and I'm running for mayor of this wonderful community. My wife and I have been married for 38 years. We've raised 3 children here, and now we have 3 young grandchildren. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Let's go with experience. I'm the only one running that has experience at the state legislature. I served on legislative audit, which allowed me to be part of the budgeting process for communities all over the state of Arkansas. I also served on Revenue and Tax Committee that allowed me to see every tax bill that came across the state legislature. It also gave me the ability, and which I did, I voted for over $100 million of tax cuts for the state of Arkansas. I was also privileged and honored to represent the House of Representatives as the chairman of the 911 task force for the state of Arkansas. Then in the process, at the end of the session, then I was garnered the opportunity to look at the $5 billion budget, which is a balanced budget for the state of Arkansas. So that's prepared me for this role. Other experience, I'm currently in banking, and I serve that role as a business development officer. And in doing so, that is provided me the opportunity with individuals in this community and businesses. I've also been in farming, and I have the personal relationships with individuals in the community and state. But more importantly, I'm applying for the job to be your mayor. This is a role that I'm ready to do from day 1. It is imperative that your vote counts the first time. I'm Harold Copenhaver, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, sir. Andy Shatley.
Whoa. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the NEA Political Animals and Chamber of Commerce for hosting this another debate so the citizens and voters of Jonesboro can hear from the candidates in this much important mayoral race. My name is Andy Shatley, and I'm running for mayor of Jonesboro. In 1983, my family moved here, Curtis and Diana Shatley, to serve in the music ministry at Walnut Street Baptist Church, and I met my high school sweetheart here. Her name is Misty, and in November we'll be married for 23 years, and we have 2 lovely daughters, Ava and Sky, and they both attend Jonesboro Public Schools. I graduated from Nettleton in 1994, and then went on to play professional baseball, and then came back to Arkansas State University and graduated with my bachelor's degree and then my master's in physical therapy. Then I sought a career in physical therapy, and in 2004, named the Director of Sports Medicine at St. Bernard's, and we're the largest sports medicine program in Northeast Arkansas. We oversee and manage the health care of approximately 3,000 athletes in this area. Very passionate about running for mayor of Jonesboro because I believe in this town, I believe in its future. I believe that I am the candidate of the future. I fall on my leadership skills in the healthcare. I'm a candidate who has managed people for the last 12 years, and we have successfully become a powerhouse in sports medicine in this area. I'm passionate about keeping Jonesboro safe, and I appreciate the opportunity to run for mayor. Quality of life issues are very important to me, and I'm excited about the future. I'm certainly a candidate that's going to roll his sleeves up and cast a vision, and I won't stop until the job's done. I'm very competitive, and I'll do the same thing for you if you elect me the mayor of Jonesboro.
Thank you, Mr. Shatley. And Mr. Elwood, if you'd like to give your opening remarks in 2 seconds.
Good afternoon. Like Andy and Harold, I'm pleased to be here to talk about Jonesboro's future. A little bit about my background is I graduated from Jonesboro High School in 1978, and upon graduation I went to Arkansas State University on a state scholarship, an academic scholarship. I was actually a fairly decent athlete at the time, but I kind of lost interest in sports and stuff like that. I've become a little more interested in literature and art and reading and things like that. My background is totally different than the other candidates run because I have a degree in history, and history actually studies about everything under the sun. Everything has a history. This pandemic has a history. Jonesboro has a history. Economic development has a history. So by drawing on how to understand history and how to read and learn from it, that's one of my strengths. Now, I'm running for mayor of Jonesboro. I'm not running to solve any state issues. So when a problem comes up, I'm not going to be calling Little Rock to ask for advice. I'll actually make my own decisions. Now, one of the things I'd like to emphasize this time is the green space here in Jonesboro, which actually I have a 100-year plan, not a 100-day plan. When you start planting trees, you start improving the drainage systems in Jonesboro. These improvements last for at least 100 years. And so if you let me mayor, I'll try to do the very best job that I can to apply my personal, unique life experiences. I'm a 60-year-old man, and I've been around Jonesboro my entire life, and I've known every mayor since Herbert Sanderson. So I actually know what the job of mayor entails and what you can and can't do. So, you know, talk about day one. I may have been preparing for this job all my life, and I didn't even really know it. So if you elect me the next mayor of Jonesboro, the only promise I'll make to you, the only endorsement I want is from the voters, and I will do the very best job that I know how to do. And thank you for this opportunity that the political animals are giving us.
Before the question, let me recognize, as Andrea said earlier, obviously prayers to the President and the First Lady who've tested positive for COVID-19. As we were discussing earlier, breaking news today that a teacher passed away in Harrisburg from COVID-19, so certainly we'll be sensitive to those things as we ask this question. So the question for the candidates. The number of new coronavirus cases in KLEK County in September almost doubled the statewide rate, according to today's Jonesboro Sun. As mayor, what would you do to slow the spread in Jonesboro? We start with Mr. Shadley. Oh, sorry.
One second, I'm sorry.
Now, Mr. Shadley.
The COVID-19 pandemic is certainly unprecedented at a national, state, and city level. One of the things that concerns me is our organization at the city level and the local level to be able to manage a pandemic locally. We do not have a coalition of experts right now, and I have already mentioned that next year in a Shatley administration we will have a public health commission that will be named. We will have local hospital administrators. We will have local experts from NYIT. We will have industry leaders to see how that affects business. We will have legislators to make sure that the decisions that are made are constitutional. I think it's important that we do everything that we can do, whatever science says that we can do, to slow the spread of COVID-19. Personally, it's an individual decision of mine to wear a mask when I can't social distance. I've implored everyone to do the same thing. I understand that it's a business's right to have a mandate within their facility. So I certainly appreciate the efforts that the businesses are trying to do to slow the spread of COVID-19. And this is something to where we have to make sure that we work together, because this affects everyone, and it's wide-reaching, not only healthcare-wise, but also economically. So being on the same page and making sure we have data-driven solutions to where we make decisions is imperative, and that's what will happen under my administration.
All right, Mr. Elwood, just a second here.
Gotta be an easier way.
It's like playing bingo.
I know, right?
All right, Mr. Elwood, your minute and 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, sure, that's an excellent question, and it's very relevant to what we're talking about now. That's where the degree in history actually comes involved in. We actually been here before. We had polio, we had the Spanish flu, and that's another reason that leadership and experience actually matters. In a situation like this, you cannot form a task force. You don't have time. You can't bring people into a room and discuss. The operation of the city has to continue, and it cannot be interrupted. So you just have to use some common sense and practical knowledge. And of course, you got to follow the CDC guidelines, and the mayor should set an example in his own personal life. But the mayor is actually very limited in what he can and can't do. So the best thing we can do is just rally together, Jonesboro strong, and just try to get through this, because it is very serious, and it's not going away anytime soon. The history of viruses, it'll probably be here for 5 years, even with the vaccine. So social distancing and the sneeze guards around there, that's probably going to be the norm for at least the next 3 years. So those are my thoughts on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Elwood. Get queued up here for Mr. Copenhagen in just a second. All right, Mr. Copenhagen.
Make sure my mic is on. As we face this pandemic, obviously we have laws in place, and our city government has enforced those laws from the state legislature. It is imperative that we continue to work together. This community has always bonded together, and we're going to learn from this experience. It is important that obviously we have two of the greatest assets in our community, our two hospitals. We have specialists, we have NYIT as well. So again, working together is the key, building bridges and to solve solutions. But one other thing that I think is very important, we have to be transparent on our website. And this is one thing that I have set out as one of my pillars. For when a situation occurs like this, that our community has access to whatever they need as soon as possible. So communication to our community, our small businesses, is going to be key in my administration. Whether it's through website, whether it's through Facebook, we've got to be able to provide the services necessary to keep our small businesses open and to keep our individuals to where their income doesn't suffer as much. So again, we've got to improve. So this is a learning experience, and the bottom line is we've got to protect every life matters. So again, moving forward, this is what this community made of, and I look forward to working through this solution in the future.
Any rebuttal, Mr. Chapman?
No, good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Elwood?
I'm good.
I suppose you have one, Mr. Copenhagen? All right, Andrew, I'll have your next question.
Okay, the second question, we will start with Mr. Elwood. What will you do as mayor to help the homeless and the hungry?
Is it ready to go right now?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Got a finger back.
Okay. Are we ready? Well, thank you. I welcome that question. I ran for mayor in 2016, and I was the only candidate that started talking about the homeless issue. It's not because I'm that smart, but the homeless people, when they found out that I was in this race, they came up to me and they told me their life stories, and how they become homeless, and the difference between temporary homelessness and long-term homelessness. And we was talking at the Out of the Dark thing. I brought it up, and to Mayor Harold Parent's credit, he said within 90 days we'd have something put together, and that's where the origins of the hub actually came from. Now, I'm not taking credit for it. I mean, I was just voicing my opinion. And he did provide some leadership in that issue. That's just the start. When it's an economic issue too. I mean, we all have big hearts and we all want to do something to address this problem, but there's selfish interest too. I mean, because you got to have economic development. You're trying to develop downtown, and you can't have a homeless person there laying on the side of the street struggling. I mean, it's very depressing and it's disheartening. There are some simple solutions. A homeless person actually needs a locker, a simple locker. Years ago, we had bus stations in every town, and they actually rented these lockers out very cheaply, and a person could put their winter coat in or something like that. So there's some common sense, not high dollar remedies to this, but it's just something we need to work on. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be there, but we have to get a framework and organize where volunteers can actually bring some of their time and talent and money into a structure, because nobody wants to do this by themselves, and nobody can do it by themselves. Because you're not doing anybody any good if you just devote your whole life to something. You have to still stay a well-rounded person. But yes, we do need to work on this.
Thank you for that, Mr. Elwood. Mr. Copenhagen, as soon as we have our time ready. Carrie's acting a bit like Miss Wallace.
It's happening instead of having to click. I guess I should have done a little more research, gentlemen.
To those watching Facebook Live, I know you can't hear the comments coming from the closet. That's what we're all listening to.
It's interesting, too.
Okay, Mr. Copenhagen, we're ready.
The issue of homelessness, and I'm very proud of our city because we are the most benevolent city in the state of Arkansas. I've witnessed that, and I'm very proud to be a part of that as well. And I have served that role for the last 20 years in different areas, but I'm really proud to say that our community is already stepping up to the plate. I've been involved in conversations where we're already looking at structures, and as a part of a mayor, it is my privilege, but it is also my role to get out to the community to say, listen, I need your personal involvement in this, whether it's financial, whatever the case may be. Years ago, we also have other issues facing us, and in 2013, the Out of the Dark, which I was very involved with, this is a statement that I took. It takes an open conversation about good people. We all know that we have lost their lives to addiction or homelessness. It takes a shining light on ugly truth that people don't want to discuss, but it takes a community coming together, such as our community in North Arkansas, to prevail, and it starts here. That still reigns true today. So again, bringing this community together, the hub is just the start, but involving people, and that communication line is already opening, and I'm proud to say we will be working on this issue moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Copenhagen. Mr. Shatley will be next as soon as we get the time reset. Okay.
Thank you for that question. Solving the chronic homelessness and food insecurity for Jonesboro is something I'm very passionate about, and an issue that I've researched over the last year or so. Is it a challenge for Jonesboro that should have been solved already? We can absolutely solve that next year. It won't take that long. The process is already in place. We need a facility for people to go to where they can get in and out, have shelter. We need a warehouse to where we can warehouse inventory. I met with a group that's called Hope International, that they warehouse inventory. So for people, whenever they find a place to live, they don't have furniture or anything for the house. We need this location of the homeless shelter needs to be on the segment and the network of our transportation system. We need to have places where people can buy fresh food. There are food deserts in North Jonesboro that we need to solve. We need to have more grocery areas in North Jonesboro where people can find quality food. These issues can be solved in 1 year. It takes communication. It takes bringing people to the table. We have the resources. We have the benevolence in Jonesboro. We actually have the ideas in place. I'm also excited about the Veterans Village that's under construction right now. We'll have an outreach program to where we'll be able to house about 7 to 10 people also. So there are things in place right now to solve this, and we need to do it, and we need to do it next year. That's something I'm passionate about, and I can get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Shatley. Mr. Elwood, rebuttal?
Do what?
Would you like to?
I think we discussed this topic, and I think we're all interested in it, so I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay. Mr. Copenhaver?
I'm good.
Ms. Shadley?
One of the last things that I want to add is solving chronic homelessness is about creating a program to incrementally solve issues in individuals' personal lives. There are issues that they need. They need either a driver's license, they need a birth certificate, they need a job, they need a place to live, they need clothes for a job interview, they need access to Wi-Fi or internet so that they can apply for a job. Those are things you have to meet, those basic needs of people. And also, let's talk about the mental health, and they have access to mental health. Many of the reasons why people are homeless is because of mental health issues, and those need to be addressed. And absolutely, those can be solved next year.
All right, we'll be moving on to question number 3. I'm gonna do a better job of
I'm
buying.
going to call, yeah,
I'm gonna do a better job of trying to buy some time here.
watch your screen.
So for question number 3, we'll be going in order, and it'll be Mr. Copenhaver first, and then Mr. Shatley, and then Mr. Elwood. So question number 3 is, what is your position on impact fees? It'll be Mr. Copenhaver first.
Well, currently, the city has works well with our developers in our community. And impact fees, we don't have such in the basis. And I think an impact fee for individuals, we have to work together for the city council. We're going to have to work together to make sure that our community remains the same when development is done. And we're very proud that our developers in our community work well with our city. The impact fees, obviously, as we continue to grow, we have to keep our infrastructure up. And so at that point in time, we have to keep everything effective and uniform as we move forward in our growth process. And I believe that we have to grow from inside to the outer part of our community. We cover 82 square miles of density. And that population per tax growth is very little per individual. So again, our structure, our roads, we have to continue, and as mayor, you've got to be responsible, physically responsible, where we don't include a tax as an impact fee, because we want development to work together with our city. Again, transparency along these lines are key, but it's going to be the partnership between the developers in our community, making sure that the grade levels of our street lights and everything are maintained to where they need to be.
All right, and then our next person will be Mr. Shatley. As soon as we get our time queued up here.
It won't let me top in, I'm sorry.
He gets 4 minutes?
It may take 4 minutes to answer that question.
Yeah, it's
4 whole
an
minutes.
easy question.
LJ, you need to tell some jokes.
I don't know if I have any 15-second jokes. My wife doesn't think anything I say is funny.
That's pretty funny right there.
Hope she's not watching this. Mr. Shatley?
Thank you. The topic of impact fees has already come up at our City of Jonesboro, and our city planner, Daryl Smith, was about to do a study there, and I have not heard the results of that study on whether or not impact fees would be appropriate for Jonesboro. Other communities have done that, and the reason is because when you have developments, we have to be able to pay for those developments as far as taking those liabilities over. Every time you have a street built, you have a street light put in place, you have curb and gutter, you have drainage issues, those are liabilities that the city's going to have to take over. There's a concept and a term that I continue to use in my campaign called financial solvency. A majority of municipalities across the country are actually financially insolvent. They cannot afford to keep up the infrastructure that gets built in their city. And so we have to make sure that we keep that into our thoughts as far as when a new development is built. Can we actually take that over and pay for that in the future, or that is overloading us and creating a financial insolvent situation? So impact fees is certainly something I would entertain, but it has to be right. It has to make sense, and it has to also be financially feasible for subdivisions and developers, so that make sure that our market is strong. Because if our market is strong, that will be passed on to the consumer, but it also continues to put our city in a financially stable position.
All right, we're going to get our time queued up here for Mr. Elwood's minute and 30 seconds. Ready to begin. Yes, sir.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Sure, that's another excellent question. Like I said, as a student of history, I've known every mayor since Herbert Sanderson. And they started talking about an impact fee in 2016. This is the most bizarre idea that I've ever heard in my entire life. And I don't really need to study to be against it because there's no fair way of doing it. How do you judge the impact over here versus over here? Anytime you do something like that, it has to be fair. And there's just absolutely no humanly way possible that you can judge an economic impact on any kind of development. That's kind of the responsibility of responsible city management of the resources you already have and that you will be given in the future, same as you've been given in the past. So I'm 100% against it.
All righty, for rebuttals would be Mr. Copenhagen first. Do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, I would just like to, yes, I'd just like to follow up with that, and I want to explain a little bit more about the impact fee from the standpoint of our community. When a development is done, and unfortunately, if there were a case where the city street were damaged, it needs to be brought back up to the grade to where it was, and that is an investment in our community. But you know what? From the development people that I talk to in our community, they 100% agree, and they work with our city as well. City Water and Light, we're very positive in that way. But if an impact fee was looked at, this would have to be something that would be done.
All righty. I wasn't patient with carrying that last time, so I apologize. Yeah, she did it the backwards math way, but it worked. All right, so 30 seconds for rebuttal for Mr. Shatley.
Yes, let's go back to,
I did it to her again. Carrie used to like it.
I know, 20 seconds, right?
30.
I am gonna get fired as the timekeeper.
I think maybe she's, there we go. All right, Mr. Shatley.
I want to reiterate that infrastructure for the city moving forward, every time that we build a subdivision, we build a road that is a new liability for the city of Jonesboro to take over, we have to make sure that our city is financially solvent, move forward. Financial stability and the ability to pay for and keep up our city to the level that we need to keep it up must be on the forefront. And thinking in the future, so we see a road built today, we have to make sure we can maintain that infrastructure moving forward 10, 20, and 30 years down the road.
All righty.
I get to talk now?
Yes, she's going to cue us up. She'll give you 30 seconds
What's
here.
your 30?
Be 30 seconds for his rebuttal. All right, Mr. Elwood.
Well, it's kind of like I said before, there's actually no fair way to do this. We're talking about new development versus old development. Whenever the city takes in a new development, the streets are already up to code. The developer actually does the street, the curbs, and the drainage. So, I mean, there's just no fair way of doing it. You have old developments in town, like maybe Melton Addition versus a brand new development, so you're going to bring them up to code. I mean, there's just no logical, fair, it's a kind of a waste of time, in my opinion, so I'm 100% against the whole concept.
Does Sarah get one now?
No, that's it.
That was it.
And thank you for your answers. And now for, let's see, we're going to question 4, starting with Mr. Shatley. How has your education and professional experience qualified you to be mayor?
Well,
You'll have a minute and 30 seconds.
okay.
I think it's a great question. Arkansas State University has been very special to me. Graduating with my bachelor's in 2002, my master's in 2004, it certainly takes preparation, rigor, and discipline to be able to make it through those programs. 15 years worth of physical therapy, healthcare experience. When you talk about taking care of people, meeting people, being able to inspire people, that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. That's certainly what that's one of my skill sets that if you ask anybody around me, but put me as your quarterback, put me as your captain, and I will take you, and we take you where we are at, and we'll lead you to success, very competitive. Also in the healthcare profession, a lot of challenges that we face in the healthcare profession. We face reimbursement issues. We face legislative issues that even in my profession that we've had some issues that we've dealt with in Little Rock as far as bills that are concerning physical therapy. So it's certainly been a great preparation as far as managing people, dealing with problems, solving complicated challenges. Those are certainly things that translate well over to a mayoral role. So I feel very prepared and feel very ready to take on the responsibilities on January 1st.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Shatley. And as Carrie is resetting our time, we'll be going to Mr. Elwood for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And I just want to thank each of you gentlemen for coming today. NEA Political Animals is here to educate voters, and we appreciate your time to do just that. Mr. Elwood?
Sure, that's another excellent question. Education should be paramount in trying to make this decision. I do have a bachelor's degree in history, and one of the best classes I ever took at ASU was Introduction to Logic, which actually teaches you how to think, how to solve problems, and how to... There's a thing called inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning, and I won't get into all of that, but yes, education is very important. And as far as my professional background, you know, I am in the green industry. I run a tree service in town, and me and my dad have actually planted most of the trees in town after the terrible tornado in '73. And part of the mayor's job, half his job is managing the other half of the budget, which is green space related and practical sense stuff like picking up garbage and things like that. So I think my unique life experience combined with my education kind of gives me a leg up on anybody running for this position. Like I said before, I'll do the best job that I know how to do. I know how to solve problems. It's not all intuitively. There's actually an academic approach to how you actually solve a problem. You have to identify what the obstacles are and what the goals are and what can actually be accomplished. And unlike Andy, I'm running to be the head coach. I'm too old to be the quarterback. So. And he was an excellent quarterback too, by the way, but I'll yield back.
All right, thank you.
I would block for him.
Introduction to logic, I'm kind of thinking should be required before anyone runs for office.
Or lives, for that matter.
Okay, now we will go to Mr. Copenhaver for the 1 minute 30 seconds.
Thank you, Miss Allen. You know, this is pretty simple for me. This community has spared me for this. Over the last 4 decades, it's almost 40 years, the process of my life and the journey that has taken from farming to insurance, which has allowed me to continue my degree program in insurance, where I received my AUTCF designation and then my securities license as well. That prepared me for the legislative role that was presented to me by this community. And in doing so, I took full opportunity to represent you, the city employees, the city of Jonesboro, and Northeast Arkansas. But that also continued in the development of coming back and having the relationship to begin in the banking and finance world, where I could work with our community, understanding how problem solving. We went into looking into budgets for small businesses and large businesses. This has prepared me for this role. Being able to work on a $5 billion budget, not everybody gets that opportunity. I have been able to do that. Not everybody gets the opportunity to work through the city and prepare and provide grants for this community. I brought those grants back to this community for growth and for Mayor Harold Perrin, and I'm looking forward to working with our county judge and Arkansas State University in providing additional needs.
Thank you. And a plug for the Delta Center right there. When one of you are elected mayor, the Delta Center is here to help. Okay, any rebuttals, Mr. Shatley?
Yeah, I want to add that, Carrie?
Carrie changed our rules earlier today to move to this fancy time clock. Mr. Shatley, go ahead.
Yes, managing people and understanding people, leading people, those are my skill sets. 12 years worth of being the director of sports medicine, taking care of over 7,000 people in the last 15 years. On a daily basis, on a yearly basis, I take care of and meet with athletic directors, superintendents, principals, coaches, parents, students, doctors, administrators. This has been my past in the last 12 years. Healthcare has certainly been my career up to this point.
Sure.
And Mr. Elwood?
Well, the only rebuttal I have is toward Harold. I've known him for a long time. Did you actually finish your studies and get a college degree? And if so, what was it in?
That's not, I have to
Yeah.
Well, it was under
Ask
30
a
seconds.
question.
Oh.
Is that
Well, they can ask a question, it doesn't mean they have to get a response. That can be part of the answer. But no, that does not mean that Mr. Copenhagen has to provide a response.
Okay.
Fair?
Fair.
Okay. Would you probably had about 10 seconds left if you want to add anything.
No,
else.
that's all.
You're
That's
good?
all.
Okay, and Mr. Copenhagen?
Well, I don't mind answering that at all. And, I've got over 120 hours in college education, but I got married when I was a junior, and I loved the opportunity. I worked 2 jobs. And so the path that I chose led me in this direction. I'm very proud of that path. Piece of paper doesn't define me, but I took the education process and went forward. When I got in insurance, I took a 2-year. I got my AUTC designation. I also got securities license. That's preparing me for this role with the employees. I'm going to be able to work with them. It's important in finance as well, in banking, so I'm proud of that role.
All righty, moving on to a new question. I'm going to buy us a little bit of time here while we get our timer back up. And our order here will be Elwood, Copenhagen, and then Shapley. And so, starting with Mr. Elwood, here's our question. What would you do to increase the safety in downtown Jonesboro and the heavy volume of industrial vehicles on Main Street? Just 1 second before we start our time here. Mr. Elwood.
Oh, you're talking about safety on Main Street?
Yes, sir.
Well, actually, you have to. That's another reason I supported Team Jonesboro, and I took a lot of heat out of some anti-tax friends, because we do have security issues in town, and we do have to find the funds and the resources to supplement the police department. We have to modernize. The Sky Cops is a great thing. We probably need to go on that, but I haven't really noticed a whole lot of heavy industrial traffic, commercial traffic on Main Street. So the only time there's ever a street there, they're actually when they do they type into Google, they get their routings. They get the shortest route, and sometimes it does take it down Main Street. So there's not a whole lot you can do about that. I mean, the streets are open to everybody. So, but the only thing I would like to add is that yes, security in Jonesboro is very important, and it's round the clock. It's 24 hours a day that we need to investigate and look into improving the safety of the entire city of Jonesboro. Yes, so that is a concern of mine. It's more of a concern of mine from the police standpoint than it is from a traffic standpoint, because I don't think there's anything that the mayor can legally do to tell somebody they cannot go down this street or that street. So those are my thoughts.
All right, we'll go to Mr. Copenhagen next. We'll queue up our 1:30 seconds.
LJ, what was the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That'll buy me some time. I already just repeated 3 times. That'll buy me a long time. What would you do to increase the safety in downtown Jonesboro and the heavy volume of industrial vehicles on Main Street? And we're ready for you.
Well, that is, I was down there actually yesterday afternoon, and I sat out front of one of the stores and visited with owners of businesses in that area. And at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the speed of the traffic that goes by, we have 18-wheeler traffic. It is very unsafe for individuals. So we need to slow that traffic down. That's very easy done. That's the process. We'll be working together. The other thing about the downtown area is we need to evolve that from the foundation of the arts and continue to move it forward in an entertainment area with people that are investing down there. We have an overlay program that has now been up in front of City Council. I think the second motion has been there, but this is key for individuals that want to invest in our community, that we're protecting that investment. Number one is make it safe. This community, my number one priority is to make it safe. So downtown area, we need to visit with our community leaders downtown that have invested. What can we do that doesn't cost the taxpayers money? More lighting. I want my family to be able to go downtown and be safe. It is an economical rate of return on our investment. And again, this is building the community from inside out. So partnering with those investors as well, public-private partnerships, we can accomplish working together to move it forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Copenhagen. We'll queue up here for Mr. Shatley. I think Carrie's doing a great job.
I'm talking to myself.
All righty, Mr. Shelley.
Yes, that's a very large question because you're talking about safety and you're talking about pedestrian safety, traffic safety, and also traffic flow. That is a massive question, and it deals with city planning and development and how we are routing traffic right now on whether or not Main Street and Church Street and such should be one way, both ways, traffic calming. There are ways to do that as far as lane width, some of the master street plans, and the complete streets, which I'm glad that we're adopting this year so that we can apply for those complete streets grants. Building out our infrastructure to make sure pedestrian safety and bicycle safety downtown is going to be imperative as we have more and more residents that live downtown. There's going to be more people afoot. That's going to help businesses downtown, people living, working and playing and shopping and eating downtown. It is going to be an economic driver for downtown. Lighting is, and I appreciate that was brought up because that's something that has happened in the past, is improving lighting of downtown, because when you can see, lighting drives away crime. Crime looks for the darkness, and so we need to be lighting up all those areas of town. I think this is very important because we've had some issues with pedestrian being struck on other streets, but as more people live downtown and become pedestrians, we have to do something now to make sure that they're safe downtown.
All righty, we'll be moving into rebuttals. Our first rebuttal would be Mr. Elwood for 30 seconds, and we'll cue you up here.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Elwood.
Well, I go downtown pretty often. I'm pretty familiar with downtown, and the lighting has improved. I don't think lighting is necessarily the answer to the problem. Like in military terms, you always talk about you got to have boots on the ground. You actually have to have a police presence. It doesn't have to even be visual. It could be even kind of an undercover type presence. So I really don't think the lighting, I think that's kind of a simplistic answer to the problem. So I just think we just have to include public safety around the whole city, and I think that's the only plausible answer that we can do.
All righty, our next rebuttal will be Mr. Copenhagen for 30 seconds. Okay, look at this ready. All right, Mr. Copenhagen.
This is not so much a rebuttal other than I just want to finish a statement. I think we're leaving out one important part of our population, and that's the children of our community. Downtown Jonesboro is very relevant. We have a program, and I'm on the board of City Youth Ministries. This is a program that involves 90 to 100 children every afternoon. We've got to continue to see how we can advance that. We need to be able to improve and include those children for their safety in our community, but better yet, to provide them the best opportunity for our community and move them forward in it.
All right, and then finally, I have 30 seconds for Mr. Shatley for a rebuttal. Just a moment. All right, Mr. Shatley.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Elwood bringing up the police presence downtown, and understanding staffing needs for the police is something that I've been passionate for the last year and a half or so. I'm also honored to receive the local law enforcement endorsement from the Fraternal Order of Police yesterday. I think that says that they realize that I understand the needs, the staffing needs, and if you really want to talk about the improving safety, we have to make sure that we have enough police officers on each shift.
Thank you. And we will move on to question 6 that will start with Harold Copenhagen. And question 6 is there something in the city's operating budget you consider to be wasteful? And if so, what is your plan to address it?
Well, that report is 131 pages, and it consists of every department that we have. And having looked at that, obviously that's where the experience comes into play. From serving in the legislature as well, and working with private businesses in our community on a daily basis of budgets of that magnitude. You know, there's some different ideas and rules of thought, but the number one thing is I've got to protect and make sure that we continue to have a balanced budget. I've got to make sure that we are, first of all, that we continue to do what Mayor Harold Barron has accomplished the last 11 years and passed our legislative audit process. It's gone with flying colors. This is critical for our community first. We have to make sure that we've got the return on investment in our community before we can make any cuts of any kind. I am very physically conservative. I've proven so in the legislature. I've proven so in my business. And I've also going to take that forward and work with people in this community to make sure, but more importantly, you have to rely on people that have been doing that for years in the city government. This is important, that you have to work together, you have to trust your team. So more importantly, it's going to be working together to see what recommendations the department heads coming together can say, what can we do for our city?
Thank you. And Mr. Stratton, I'll repeat the question for you. Is there something in the city's operating budget you consider to be wasteful? And if so, what is your plan to address it? In 15 seconds.
It won't take me long, I've got it.
You got it.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I will say that I don't have government experience, but I have studied the budget for the last year, and it didn't take me long to figure it out, because all you have to do is talk to the people that are boots on the ground. And well, let's just talk about the police department. We have $240,000 budgeted for overtime. If you talk to the police officers, the majority of that time is sitting in courts not doing anything. So it doesn't take government experience to look through a budget and figure out where the wasteful spending is. That's inefficiency. Next, we're spending our jail expenditures go up every year. We're at now $2.2 million to the county jail. Recidivism rate, 51%. Over half of the people that are going into jail are going back to jail. That's inefficiency. That needs to be fixed. Leasing or buying vehicles. There are some vehicles that we don't need to be buying. We need to be leasing vehicles because it's more financially efficient in uses of our money. There are certain vehicles, yes, that need to be purchased because they're not going to be worth a lot when they're done, specifically some of the police cars. But I will tell you, this balance of the budget thing that you hear, that's a misnomer. And when we have reserves and there's projects that need to be paid for, we will run a deficit budget to get into that reserve so that we can build those projects. So the balanced budget, be careful when you hear that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Elwood, before we go to you, I know Mayor Perrin was mentioned earlier, and he has often visited NEA political animals, and he's in our thoughts and prayers, and we appreciate his service to the city of Jonesboro for all of these years. And so, Mr. Elwood, I'll repeat the question one more time.
Sure.
Is there something in the city's operating budget you consider to be wasteful? And if so, what is your plan to address it?
Well, I'm sure there is a lot of waste in there, but you have to approach the budget every single year because your situation changes. Like I said, I've been fortunate enough in my tree service business that I get to interact with some people. If you actually own a tree, you're in a pretty good station in life. So like I said, when I say that, I've actually known every mayor since Herbert Sanderson. That's a truthful statement. The city budget of Jonesboro, it actually grows every year, every single year. You can't repeat last year's budget versus this year's budget. Your priorities change. So if somebody comes out here and says that they're going to cut this and they're going to cut that, well, sometimes cuts are good and sometimes cuts are not so good. You have to look, like I said, I have a 100-year vision of Jonesboro and a 100-year plan. I'm not looking to just the very next budget cycle. So when you're talking about buying versus leasing, sure, all that's a determination that you have to come up with. But actually, you probably need a balance of both. There's probably a place for older vehicles and newer vehicles. If you overinvest in a new technology, even in your business, and then another one comes along and you're fully invested over here, that's what I'm talking about being short-sighted. You have to actually look for the end game and long-term when you're doing budgeting processes. And I know they say it's a 130-page budget or however many, but a lot of that is redundant in the budget. You can actually cut the budget in half. You've got public safety, police and fire over here, and then the rest of it is kind of discretionary spending. Outside of the street program, you got to maintain the streets and you have to pick up the city garbage and things like that. So yes, the budget is very important.
Okay, thank you. We'll move into our 30-second rebuttals. It kind of loses its punch when you have to reset the time clock to 30 seconds, but we appreciate Carrie doing that for us. Mr.
I
Hope.
think it's a wonderful feeling.
Some of my family feud, man.
Maybe it would work in the presidential debate if they had a
I
time
mean,
clock like
one
this.
other day, didn't they?
Mr. Copenhagen?
What we have to remember, and you the taxpayer has to remember, for every action, there's a reaction. So keep that in mind. It's just like what Mr. Elwood would say, but more importantly, it's what we do as a team work together. When it comes to budgeting, currently the city Jonesboro, individuals don't pay for our trash department. Well, that starts off a deficit of $4.5 million a year. So be careful what we ask for when we're looking at not balancing the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon.
Oh, I forgot to.
I'm trying to follow the rules.
I know, and you've all been so great to me. Thank you.
Candidates
So
are
respectful.
in moderator. Okay.
I want to tell a story real quick about inefficiencies, and it doesn't take a lot of experience to figure this out. You talked to a developer recently, and we had an issue to where they were trying to get a certificate of occupancy, and they were supposed to build a sidewalk right where we're going to be widening an intersection, and they had to put that sidewalk in. And just a few months later, that sidewalk was torn out, and the intersection was widened out. So if you want to talk about wasting money, and we have to have some common sense when we have some of these issues come up, because that was money we could have paid for in another place.
Thank you, and LJ Bryan is on the city council, and so if anyone wants to talk to him about that.
He'll have the answer.
Yeah.
Mr. Elwood, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. I think the budget is important to all of us, and that is where you actually will shine as a leader, is how you make budget decisions, what kind of priorities you actually establish. That's why I'm saying the green space is very important to me from a practical standpoint. That is economic development. Some people may think this is wasteful. I remember years ago when we first did the medians in town, you know, where all the intersections, they had the Adopt the Intersection program. I was actually in on those discussions, and of course that needs to be updated and improved. So they're just, you know, the budgets are kind of boring, but that's actually where the rubber meets the road in any kind of government operation.
All right, that was it. That was it for questions. That worked out perfectly. We really basically quote unquote budgeted. I guess we use that word, we use that term loosely. We budgeted for 6 questions, worked out quite well. So we will go to closing statements. We'll be in the reverse order of how we started. So with our closing remarks, each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we will begin with Mr. Elwood. And we are ready for you, sir.
Okay. Well, yes, I'd just like to say this has been a very good discussion. Like I said before, actually, Andy and Harold and I, we actually get along, and we agree on a lot of things. We just have different life experiences and different ways of approaching what we need to do. What our priorities are a little bit different, but that Jonesboro Strong, I don't know who came up with that thing, but that's actually very descriptive of what we are and what we try to accomplish. I ran for mayor in 2016. A lot of things I talked about, homelessness, and of course people tell me I need to shut up about drainage, but that's, water runs downhill, and I've just been involved in those kind of projects all my life. But the only thing I could add is that with my education background and my unique life experience, because I'm not like a lot of people, that I'd love to bring some of my knowledge and expertise to the city that I care very much about. I've never lived anywhere else. I mean, I spent my entire life here, and I kind of know Jonesboro in a manner that very few people do. So the only promise that I'll make, and you know, I'm not really looking for anybody's endorsement outside of the voters, because whenever you start doing an endorsement, there's strings attached and there's promises made. Otherwise, there wouldn't be endorsements at all. And it's part of the political process, and it is important that you kind of get a feel for who people are and what their priorities are. And the only priority I have, and the only thing that I'm interested in doing, is doing the best job that I know how to do. I've never seeked political office in my life. It's kind of a surprise to me that I'm doing it now, but I am 60 years old, and I think that I also have a personal feeling that you should be at least 50 before you get too involved in politics. But that's just a personal observation. It may not be true, but it's just one of the things that how I see the world. So I'll just repeat that if you elect me and make me the very next mayor of Jonesboro, that I will take it very seriously. And as a student of history, I understand the importance of the office and the role that the mayor actually plays. I'll do the very best job that I know how to do, but I can only do it with the support of the community and people about, because none of us know what the future holds.
Alrighty, and candidates, we have a little bit of feedback, which we're about done, but if you wanted to turn your mics off if you're not speaking, maybe that'll help us out. And so for a 2-minute closing remark, we'll move on to Mr. Shatman.
Yes, once again, I want to thank Political Animals for organizing this debate. This is probably about the 3rd or 4th one we've had, and it's a great opportunity for the citizens to be able to survey the candidates and try to translate one of us into that race and that role come January. I will tell you that I'm passionate about becoming the mayor of Jonesboro. I am not seeking the job title, I'm seeking the job. I want to do the work. I will put in the work. I've done the preparation to be the next mayor of Jonesboro. 3 words you will continue to hear from me: trust, transparency, and teamwork. Those are things that are just not campaign slogans. Those are who I am, and that's exactly the kind of mayor that I will be. I'm passionate about keeping Jonesboro safe. I'm passionate about providing opportunities for anybody who wants to achieve success in Jonesboro. I'm passionate about promoting Jonesboro to the world abroad, and I'm passionate about improving the quality of life here at home. I want to be your next mayor. I will roll my sleeves up. I will get down on the ground and work hard for you. I am a leader. I'm a proven leader, and that's exactly what I plan on doing. I'm excited about Jonesboro's future, and I hope that you will vote for me for your next mayor of Jonesboro.
All right, we'll reset the time here for our 2-minute closing statement finally from Mr. Copenhaver. And as we wrap up, we'll have a little bit small comment after Mr. Copenhaver concludes, but certainly thank the candidates for being here today. And I'll also say it is incredibly hard to run for office. And for folks that might be watching this, maybe some folks have ran and some hadn't. And if you hadn't, let me tell you, you have no idea what these guys have subjected themselves and their families to a lot. So we appreciate them being willing to serve our community. So finally, a 2-minute closing statement from Mr. Copenhaver.
Well, thank you again to Political Animals for allowing this opportunity, and to the candidates as well. This is my community. I love this community. I'm very blessed and honored to say that Harold Barron, for the past 12 years, has led this community forward, and we needed someone that could step in from day one to continue to do that role. I feel that I am that qualified candidate to continue to move this community forward. I'm capable, and I've already started working to build bridges to do so. The other side of that is endorse me, and I've also received the endorsement of the firefighters in this community, because they know through the experience that what I provided them in the state legislature, through my support, also the policemen I support, and have passed many bills for their protection. It is important and imperative that you, the voter, make the vote correct for whom you feel is the candidate. You've heard ideas, you've heard words today, but do they have meaning? Do they have backing? I have put out a plan. There is a plan that I'm already starting to incorporate for this community. More importantly is how we include that. It's got to be diversification. It's got to be including our Arkansas State University, our students. This is passionate. I love this community. We are working together already. And so, again, the key is the experience that I have brought forward in the last 40 years. I'm ready to continue to move that forward. So from 30 years down the road, they're going to say thank you for the job that this community has done together. And that's why I'm here today, to ask for your support and your vote to be your next mayor of Jonesboro on November 3rd.
All right, thank you, Mr. Copenhaver. I'll say briefly, our next meeting will be October 16th with our legislative candidates, Representative Brent Smith and his Democratic opponent Jim Burton, and then Representative Jack Ladyman and his Democratic opponent Reggie Prunty. Same format. Folks will be encouraged to submit questions to our NEA politicalanimalsgmail.com. The deadline will be Thursday, October 15th at noon. And so folks can certainly email those questions in, and we'll have the same format that day and broadcast on Facebook Live. So thanks to folks who were here. Thank you to our candidates. And then if you'll mask up, we'll take a picture together and we'll conclude our meeting today.